Hello and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. Hope everyone is doing well. Today I have 4 Reddit stories for you guys. All credit goes to the original posters of these stories, and I will link them in the description. Haunted dorm. In 2013, I was a freshman in college. There are always university stories with haunted dorms, rooms, or basements. So I never thought anything of it when I heard that our dorm, Rogers Hall, was very haunted. Within the first 3 weeks, 5 girls attempted to commit suicide by jumping off the building. Thankfully, they were unsuccessful, but it for sure rocked us and made us start to believe there may be an angry presence hanging around. One early morning, my roommate and I were asleep, and we always left the TV on, and we were in bunk beds. This is kind of important to the story, because normally my roommate couldn't get out of bed without waking me up. When I woke up, I didn't have my glasses on, but I could see a girl standing in front of our TV. She had medium brown hair, was wearing a gray sweatshirt and some jeans, and she looked like she was chewing on her sleeve. I immediately thought it was my roommate and rolled over to turn on my desk lamp and grab my glasses, to ask her why she was up so early. When I flipped on the light and grabbed my glasses, she was gone, and I thought maybe my roommate went to the bathroom, so I got out of bed and looked up at her bed, and she was still sleeping. I shook her awake and asked her how she got up there so quickly, and she had no idea what I was talking about. The same day, maybe within a few hours, our friend that lived down the hall went to the communal bathroom and was washing her face. The door to the bathroom was very heavy and scraped the floor when you opened it. She said she heard someone open the bathroom door and she saw someone walk behind her. She didn't think anything of it because it was our floor's bathroom and girls were waking up to get ready for classes. On one side of the bathroom there were toilets, and on the other side of the bathroom there were showers. But there were sinks and mirrors in the middle for both sides. Our friend was on the side of the showers. She said she saw the girl walk into the shower. As she was washing her face, she never heard the shower turn on, and she called over to her asking if everything was okay. She even walked over to see if the girl needed help, but there was no one there. Nothing ever happened again to either of us that year, but it still creeps me out. Midnight jogger. So this happened to me about a year ago. I live in a really small town, and one night I went out with some friends and drove back home around midnight or so. Obviously, during this time in a small town, there weren't any people out. My driveway has a large gate that I need to open in order to park inside and then close it afterwards. When I went to close the gate, something just told me to look down the street to my left. My house is on the corner of the block, and once I turned to look, I saw what looked like a person running super fast. It had to have been a full-on sprint. They were running right towards me, coming from across the street. I immediately got freaked out and ran inside my back door to the house. I quickly looked back out of the window to see if they were at the fence or going to come into the yard. However, when I looked outside, nothing was there. The direction they were running, I would have been able to see from the door if they continued to run down the street past our house, but I didn't even see that. The gate isn't very far from my house, so they could have gotten out of view from the back door that fast. I really thought someone was running up to attack me or something, and maybe they were, but I might have gotten in the house too fast, so they turned down the other street last minute. I almost died protecting my friends, and they'll never know. I live in a city located in a valley with a lot of smaller towns up the hills and mountains around, so it's part of the local culture for teenagers and young adults to visit these smaller areas during the winter to drink, smoke weed, and hang out with their friends. My uncle bought a house in one of these areas, so eventually I decided to get the keys and spend a weekend there with 5 of my friends. The house has 2 big bedrooms with 3 beds each and a lot of extra mattresses. At night we decided at some point to go back inside and just chill watching TV. But since the living room had no sofas yet, we brought some mattresses from the bedrooms and just used them. One of my friends, Victor, decided to go out to smoke, and after some minutes we hear someone knocking on the window just behind us. Everyone got scared for a second. but just looked at the window and said things like, "Oh shit, it's just Victor." But since we were sitting on mattresses close to the ground, it wasn't easy to see clearly who was at the window, and since the person just stood there looking straight at one of the girls, I got up to check. I saw a man who somehow looked a lot like my friend, but a bit more fat and older than him. As I came to the conclusion that it was a stranger, I froze while looking at him and him looking back at me when I said, "It's not Victor." Everyone else also froze and looked at me waiting for a reaction, but all I could think was to ask what he wanted. He just stood there for a second and asked, "There's a bar nearby and we need a drummer to play with our band. Is any of your friends a drummer by any chance?" Which weirdly enough I am, but I just told him no, and after some extra long seconds looking at us, he left. My friend came back and we made fun of the situation, making jokes on how it was him messing with us, etc. Later, most of the group decided to sleep in one bedroom and leave the second for me and one of the girls, since they saw us kissing earlier. We all go to bed, but some hours later, I wake up to the girl shaking me in horror and whispering that she heard something coming from the kitchen. So I get up, tell her to lock the bedroom when I leave, and go check the sound like the moron who always dies first in films. As I pass by the second bedroom, I think about calling someone else to join me. But as soon as I see them all sleeping, I hear something at the kitchen's window. I quickly move there in silence, check around, and as soon as I find and grab a knife, the door opens right in front of me. It was the same guy. I knew it was no joke since I just saw my friend sleeping. It probably took like 5 to 10 seconds of us staring at each other, but it felt like an eternity. While still holding the door handle, we made a slow movement with the other hand towards something under his shirt, which was probably a gun or knife. But I also lifted my hand, showing him the knife, so he stopped. The kitchen was quite small, so we were standing pretty close to each other, and at this point we both knew it would end bad for both if he tried something. So I just shook my head and said as calm as I could, "Don't." He just kept staring at me a bit more and then finally closed the door and went away. I went back, told the girl it was nothing and that we should go back to bed. I didn't sleep that night. We left early in the morning, and I made sure to ask my uncle and cousins if they ever received weird visits there. They said that the only person who ever goes there at night is the old neighbor when his wife doesn't let him arrive drunk at home. So he grabs my uncle's rocking chair to sleep until he gets sober. Now every year my friends talk about spending another weekend there, but I also make an excuse so we never go through that again, and they never know what happened. I never felt alone, and now I know why. I, 24 female, grew up in a 4-bedroom country house. I always believed to be haunted. It has a 4-bedroom double-story house with plenty of garden space for me and my 2 siblings to play in, me 7, sister 9, and brother 13. Since I was young, I remember my family mentioning my sleepwalking. I never woke up in strange places or remember being startled awake, yet I can recall this being discussed well into my adulthood. My siblings, being older, always tried to scare me with the idea of our house being haunted. They told me stories of Miss Maisel that died in the house and liked to abduct little misbehaving girls. Being the youngest, I believed every word and tried to be the best behaving little girl in the house so she would take my sister instead. When my parents started mentioning strange things happening in the house, I assumed it was Miss Maisel and told them so. Tap's siblings' shared bathroom would open at night. The baby gate for our Yorkies would be opened at the top of the stairs, etc. Small things would occur that my parents would eventually blame on me and sleepwalking, as my door would be the only one open during their findings. Everything seemed innocent enough until my sister 10 at the time said she was pushed down the stairs one night while going to the loo. Our shared bathroom was across the small hall past the stairs. She luckily didn't suffer major injuries, just her right arm broken. But she also didn't see who had done it, Because of my sleepwalking and my brother sleeping in the downstairs living room that night, it was assumed that it was me. These are the main instances I remember, as at the age of around 13, we moved into an apartment in the city and everything paranormal quieted down. I was sharing a room with my older sister that demanded to have some light in the room, the bathroom across, to be able to sleep. My brother and sister moved out eventually to study and start their lives. By the time I turned 18, my parents started going through a divorce, and my mother and I stayed in the flat as it was close to the uni I wanted to attend. I decided and applied to study psychology. I qualified for a partial scholarship that also covered half of the rent. Year 1 to 3, I used that money to help my mom out with rent. Year 4 was pretty stressful for me. I broke up with my first serious boyfriend. I started going out more with friends and spending less time with my mom. The result was that I started to fail some of my subjects, having to get a part-time job to pay for retakes. It was during this time that my mom would accuse me of doing things I knew couldn't be true. Again, like at the previous house, I was apparently opening and not shutting drawers. I was leaving taps open, I was leaving the fridge door open, etc. I don't remember any of these things. I felt gaslit at this point and wanted to prove to her how insane this sounded. I made a big deal about sticking tape from one side of my door frame to the other at ankle height. If I were to sleepwalk across this, I would either trip or break the tape, I thought. The next morning, I wake up and look at the doorway. First thing, the tape was intact. I looked at my phone and saw that it was past 9 a.m. My mom didn't wake me up for class. I stepped over the tape and went to her room. As soon as I opened her door, I could smell gas. It was winter and she had a gas heater in her room. I phoned emergency services and she was revived. After she came home, she started dropping hints that it must have been me, sleepwalking, trying to kill her. I mentally gave up at this point, knowing I was innocent, looking for a new apartment. I found a place very close to campus, although it wasn't looked after very well. I had to spend a small fortune to scrub the place up and down to even be livable. As I was nearing the end of my 4th year, I knew I had to repeat some subjects next year, and I had to find a second part-time job to cover the difference of my scholarship. I started bartending at night, closing off and being home at 3 a.m. My 9 a.m. classes were difficult, but I made it to work. Life was hectic but peaceful for the first 6 months. On the seven-ish month of independence, I started falling off the wagon. I went out more, dated more, and started experimenting with substances. I started missing classes by prioritizing events, friends, or recovery from hangovers above all else. I started sleepwalking again and would wake up to open taps, the fridge empty onto the floor, the cupboards open, and bruises all over my body. I always thought the bruises on my body were proof of the destructive sleepwalking, so I never mentioned it to my family as a child. Now, my adult self had difficulty rationalizing finger grip bruises on my upper arms and skin-breaking scratches on my legs. I started going to psychologists after I experienced hallucinations of moving shadows. I would feel awake, yet my shadow would be moving on the wall across my bed. My apartment would be ransacked by the time my alarm would go off, and I would wake up with new bruises. I just couldn't deal with anything at this point, and everything felt out of control. One night the bar closed particularly late due to friends of the owner staying behind buying the staff drinks. I got home around 5 a.m. and decided to disable my alarms for the next day as I would sleep in. I sat on my bed when I had an idea. Why not pour baby powder on my floor to see my sleepwalking in action the next day? Drunken thoughts led to drunken action. My floor was plastered with baby powder from the kitchen to the foot of my bed. I woke up the next morning forgetting about the dumb plan I had made and just looked at the baby powder mess from my bed. The only steps made were my own at the moment while thinking about the mess I had to clean. As soon as I stepped out of my bedroom, I saw the disaster in the kitchen. All the cupboards were open, the pots, pans were on the floor, the fridge was open, and the stove plates were on. Luckily, electrical and not gas. I know what psychosis is, and I don't want to mention my experience to anyone, but I know I didn't cause the strangulation marks on my neck or the scratches on my arms. I am almost a psychologist, but I believe my shadow is haunted. I feel as if it feeds on my despair, and if nothing is done, it will kill me. Thank you for listening. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing and liking my channel, and I will see you on the next one.